So I want to talk about the Max Caster rap controversy again, and just to follow up that if people don't know already, he did get suspended for 2 months without pay, and he has to take mandatory sensitivity classes, and if he doesn't pass them, he's terminated. So what I want to say is that, I just want to talk about my feelings about it. Like, first of all, it's the right move for All Elite Wrestling because obviously they are a public company, and if they do something like give him a pass or they don't do anything about it, it's going to upset people to a point where they may not watch the show or there's a huge cancel culture. So ultimately, sometimes this is just a way for them to put water on the fire. I am concerned when Max Caster comes back. I do hope that, because I do like his gimmick, that, he has a lot of wins on AEW Dark. So I really hope that they kind of push him towards the tag team titles. But I understand if they want to be safe and just keep it on somebody else for a while, because you also have to kind of think about how people are going to react to him when he actually comes back. I do feel like, when I look at all the comments, like the thing about Simone Biles and Duke Lacrosse, I don't think that that's too offensive to me because obviously, people can say, I don't think that was too hurtful with Simone Biles, but to each their own. I understand people may feel differently, and I don't mind saying that I was misdiagnosed with autism, and I've had my parents and other people think that I'm schizophrenic when I'm not. So I definitely know what it's like when people insult me or made fun of me a lot. I'm growing up with mental health issues that I do not have. And I know what it's like to, want to, be alive, not be alive, deal with depression, not have friends, choose not to have friends, hate myself a lot because of all the bullying that I've received, because people thought that I have mental health issues. And then also, just growing up without a good support system, just also ball busting. So, with the mental health thing, I don't think it was severe. I don't think Simone Biles has actually reacted or even knows about this because she's so busy with her life. But I do think that I understand where people can be offended. And I also think that, as somebody who has been categorized as a person with mental health issues, I can understand where I can understand how those stuff may hurt. But, there's some people who will be offended. There will be some people who will not be offended by that. But I totally understand. The thing about Duke Lacrosse, that's a controversial one because obviously with Duke Lacrosse, it's been proven that the woman lied about being raped. So the whole thing about it being a rape case or him mocking rape is not true anymore. It's not true because, the woman lied about being raped. And then the last thing about Julia's vagina, I'm trying to think of the lyrics. What's that smell? Julia's vagina, almost saying it. I think that that's the big reason why he should be he should be suspended because you do not talk that way to a coworker, even if you're doing a rap roast. Nowadays, that's very inappropriate. I know that there's some people like OTR Central, which I strongly disagree with, saying that, obviously if she had an OnlyFans account, she did porn or, she had a sex tape like Paige who got leaked online or whatever, she'll be making money or making profit. So it's not a loss to her. But I do think that that's just very, very personal. You do not make a comment off of somebody's genitals at all. That's just that's really inhumane. Or, that's just really uncalled for. I remember when I ran track in high school, there were a lot of young girls that quit the track team because there was a lot of sexual harassment and a lot of boys will be boys type of jokes. And I remember there was the top runner in my and he was saying one day he was saying do girls masturbate with 3 fingers in each one of their holes and stuff like that. I remember the coach kind of laughing and whatever. And it got into an environment where it's almost like if you were a top runner or whatever, the coach didn't care. But if you were not that great, you were easily cut for things like that. So there was a double standard. But obviously, I went to high school back in 2006, so obviously saying stuff like that was not treated like a big deal. But you don't personally call somebody out like that and just like talk about their body part. And and also I want to transcend that. That's true with men. You don't talk about male anatomy. You don't talk about female anatomy. You don't talk about somebody who doesn't identify as a male or female and their anatomy or whatever. That's just not really cool. And so I think for that reason. And I also think that when people look at this, they have to look at the eyes of AEW as a company. So, do I think they responded appropriately? Absolutely, because if you're making millions upon millions of dollars and somebody says something like that, and obviously it's very, very controversial and it's upsetting your audience, you have to take some action because. At the end of the day, your audience is who's making you money. And then what I would also say, too, is that the other thing is that I don't think termination was appropriate. I think that if he terminated, that would be a little too far. I think Max Caster deserves a second chance. There is some accountability on Tony Khan's fault for not monitoring that because he's in charge of everything his show produces. And I also think with Max Caster, he's doing a rap roaster gimmick. So obviously... it was just him doing his gimmick, and he said something that was out of line. So I think that in his heart of hearts, the lesson here needs to be not a termination. It's just you went too far with your gimmick, but we should have you back because of a growing room. But also there's accountability on AEW's side for letting that air when they had complete power over that. So that's all I have to say about it. And I also, just as I said, my big hope is that Max Caster gets continuously pushed. He learns how to be better from this. And if they want to do a controversy about, oversensitivity versus the edgy culture, I think they have something great. Like, I can see Max Caster coming back and he's like, well, Tony Khan's an asshole for doing that. You fans are too soft or whatever. And then they can kind of play a feud between Max Caster and Tony Khan. The Acclaimed versus like Tony Khan and his goons, and then kind of do something out of that. I think that would be the best approach because they need to have better stories with their characters. But yeah, and I also think that I do feel like the last thing I want to talk about is the fan backlash. Like I think like obviously people have a right to react and to say how they feel and stuff like that. I do think that sometimes people should talk about the consequences that they want to see, and sometimes people have to understand that maybe their consequences or what they want to see happen may be a little too much. OTR Central, like I'm friends with the guys that role model to me, Jeff Schlegel. I disagreed with some things he was saying. I think one thing I disagree with him saying is just a bunch of people wasting their time and just want to like throw somebody under the bus. I think that in my sense, obviously when people watch a show, they have different feelings about things that are being said. So obviously, people are going to react the way they want to react. Like when I was a kid, Dave Chappelle was very, very popular, but I remember how he used the word nigger a lot on that show. And a lot of times there were people who felt uncomfortable with that. And one of the reasons why Chappelle was not nominated for an Emmy, which he rightfully deserved in many cases, is because they didn't like, is because they felt it was too raunchy in many ways. But, it's kind of hypocritical because you have The Sopranos and then you have the Chappelle Show. And then even though Chappelle was kind of like a groundbreaking comedian, and even though the show was popular and it drew money, he was never nominated for an Emmy when he should have, or even won an Emmy because his show was so popular and it would have been marketable. But there are many times where that your controversy doesn't get you far, or it gives you the wrong type of attention. So I definitely think that this is a growing point. I think that as a business person, you got to protect your profits. So I think that what AEW did was appropriate for what they need to do. And I think as a business person, we can all kind of agree because, somebody says something, they threaten your livelihood, they have to pay the consequences. But I also understand the other side of accountability. And I think as long as Tony Khan kind of says, I dropped the ball because I should have just kind of been charged of censoring it or being charged with editing process before it got all over the place. I'm happy he's taking accountability for it. If he did not, then it does feel like a company throwing their employee under the bus. Max Caster has a level of accountability, and so does Tony Khan, and that's how it has to be.